by hormone. That's pretty much the three choices. So again, the blood is 300. The filter coming in is, okay. At the end of the proximal tubule, even after bulk reabsorption, it is
300.
300. Okay. The descending loop. What are we doing on the descending loop?
H2O is being reabsorbed.
We're reabsorbing water. Now this water's interstitially, but also we have all this vasa recta, all these peritubular capillaries picking it up. We just can't draw it all, right? Remember, there's a million, or there's 200,000, whatever it will be for 20%. Okay, so we have that. Now, if we're evaporating water, what's happening to the concentration inside?
Becoming more concentrated, getting higher.
All the way up to
1200.
We're able to concentrate up to 1200. That's the filter right there. That's what's happening on the descending loop. We are reabsorbing water, not salt. So this is becoming concentrated. The ascending loop, what are we doing?
Reabsorbing salt.
We're reabsorbing salts like sodium,
And water can't follow it.
potassium, and chloride. But, and that's the key, that's something that's sort of new for most of us, that H2O would love to follow all that salt, but it can't. There are no aquaporins. So, we don't talk much when we talk about water flow and osmosis about aquaporins. We just say it goes, diffuses through the membrane. But really, you require, which most tissues have, these aquaporins for efficient water flow. But there are none, okay? Never, ever, ever. No invitation, water cannot follow. And the bottom line, well, we'll keep doing this then. So if we're pumping out salt, of course it's going both ways, and we're not getting rid of the water, what's happening to the concentration of the filter? More dilute. Because effectively, we're pumping out salt. So we're diluting what's actually left. By getting rid of the salt, keeping the water, this is becoming more dilute. And in fact, if you look at this, okay, this is like always 300 here. We're staying consistent with the blood. Okay, now we increase. If you look at this number versus where we started, this is, remember, osmolarity is salt. So we have less salt here. So what did we net? Each time we go through, what are we doing? We're reabsorbing salt. And what we're using that to do, although you don't need to the complexity of why it's vertical, is by reabsorbing salt as we go through, this long loop of Henle is going to create a vertical osmotic gradient. Let's get rid of that macular density right now. This is all the way around, right? We're just drawing it here because the collecting duct's going to use that in a minute. So we're pumping out salt. Water can't follow. There's a net, accumulation of salt here. And by doing this, again, the key words, and don't forget these words, the long loops of Henle create the vertical osmotic gradient. The collecting duct's going to use this in a minute. Now, what's not mentioned, but I mentioned it plenty of times because it's related to diuretics, which I'll talk about. Most of the distal tubule, we all know the distal tubule here, is also pumping out salts.
Mm-hmm.
So that by the time we get to the end of the distal tubule, the top of the collecting duct, we're at a very, very dilute filtrate of 50. By the time we get to the end of the collecting duct, we go from very dilute all the way up to a very, very concentrated urine. Okay? And that's where we're going to come to in a minute. But first, the long loop of Henle created the vertical osmotic gradient. And again, if you look at the little video, you can actually see how it happens. You keep passing, it keeps sort of equilibrating, and you have this gradient. Once this gradient forms, do we want to sort of then, well, if we look at this, we still have fluid passing through. Do we just look at this side? Do we want the water now to basically come back in here? Okay, that will do what to concentration? It will dilute it, right? We need this to be maintained. So we need something now to maintain the vertical osmotic gradient. And that something is
That's the rectum.
Vas erecta. So the vas erecta,
Please say so.
and we'll show you how, maintains long loop family crate. The vas erecta maintains the vertical osmotic gradient. I'll call it VOG, because I don't want to keep trying to scribble that. It does it in the following fashion. This was the wrong week to sort of get sick here with. Because actually, between all my schools, I have kidney and cancer. That's what I talk about all week. It's my most exciting week, and I'm like, dying here. Okay. Anyway, for the vas erecta, the way it does it, again, it's not an essay. You just have to kind of get the idea of how it's maintaining it. It's basically, because it's going in the opposite direction, remember, we're pumping out salt. So there's higher salt than what's in. It actually picks up salt within the blood vessel. You have a better picture of this. So by the time it reaches the bottom here, it's actually at 1200 as well. So that on its way out now, this water will be sucked up by that sort of moving party to the body. Instead of the water sort of diluting out the gradient, it's going to be picked up by the vas erecta, so that ultimately what's coming back to the body is the right osmolarity, because we don't want to be all messy with cells either, right? So, yes? Okay.
Picking up salt there and picking up water on the other side.
Yeah, picking up the salt, that will help suck up the water. We actually are effectively taking salt and water back to the body. And that's going to maintain this gradient for its use right now. So, water always, okay? We have water always. We have water always. Water never, and this will be hormonal control by invitation only. The invitation being, we can just put over here, ADH. ADH means what? Well, I guess what am I asking? It's antidiuretic hormone, but in our minds, my mind already, I just think water reabsorption, okay? Because anytime we need water to be reabsorbed, we're going to have ADH. The idea of why we made it vertical is that there's a different sensitivity along the collecting duct. And this is the collecting duct. That is what's responsive to ADH. Different sensitivity, with this being the most sensitive. What that means to us is if we need a little water, okay, if you just want to think of it that way, we're going to produce some ADH, and that's only going to be enough to affect the receptors here at the top. So those receptors, if you looked at that picture, basically allow the aquaporins to be inserted. Now water will be reabsorbed, and now we'll come to whatever the vertical osmotic gradient, the equilibrium is. The way I drew it then, now it's at 300. We absorbed some water, which we needed, and now the urine is more concentrated. If we need more water, more ADH, we'll start inserting aquaporins further and further down. Okay, here the urine might come out at 600. If we're really dehydrated or low blood pressure or whatever, we produce max amount of ADH. We insert the maximum amount of aquaporins that we can. We're able to concentrate our urine up to 1200 milliosmol. So that's very concentrated. That's when we need water. ADH, we need water. Okay. The other aspect right over here, and then we're going to make that chart again, is this was hormonal control. Basically in this area, and these cells will be playing the game in a minute, we also have basically principal cells which are going to respond to aldosterone. And for us, aldosterone, ALD, means what to us?
Salt reabsorption.
Mm-hmm.
Sodium reabsorption with water follow. So, we'll reproduce our chart. Of high blood pressure, low blood pressure, high blood osmolarity, low osmolarity. It's not an essay question, but I've got 3 or 4 or 5 questions on, you have low blood pressure, which of the following are true? ADH up, blah, blah, down, that type of thing. Again, you probably want to put the chart on your page. And of course, we already know the essay questions really involving that, low blood pressure system. Again, nice 10 points, just write down all the information on that chart, and that's 10 points. Low blood pressure, high blood pressure, low osmolarity. High osmolarity. Okay, with the blood pressures being the main controls over this, again, I'm leaving the space because we know what's coming. We're writing ADH, aldosterone, ADH. Let's just do those first. So, low blood pressure, ADH. We want to increase it because what are we going to do? Increase water reabsorption. Blood pressure, blood volume, we don't want to be urinating out of that volume. We want to keep it in. ADH, we're going to keep it in. Low water reabsorption. How about aldosterone? Because this means sodium reabsorption and H2O follow. So we're fine-tuning water and salt on this last section, as well as pH in a minute. And so obviously we need both. They work together. Now, what we put up here was part of your essay question, because what's a main trigger for both of these?
Oh, renin, yeah.
And so remember that renin, aldosterone, angiotensin 2 pathway is what's your 10-point question. You don't need the cardiovascular, but you need everything else, including what makes what. It's pretty much a reproduction of that, is really what I want. And again, try to spell pretty closely, especially for angiotensinogen. Because if you just write angiogen, it's like, come on, man. You say angio, I mean, I'm giving you the question, angiotensinogen. Okay? So, again, the opposite, high blood pressure. Okay, it's going to increase ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide, which is basically blood volume in your heart, causing that to be released. And what's going to happen to ADH and aldosterone? Where is ADH made?
Hypothalamus,
Where is aldosterone made?
adrenal gland.
The adrenal gland, adrenal cortex. I would accept either. Okay, they work together. Most of the time, we're working together, high and low blood pressure. Okay. Low and high osmolarity, which they'll be on the test. Again, I like to, and I would probably recommend, unless you really have this, draw a little diagram so you remember what's happening here. Low osmolarity, we'll put a low number out here. High osmolarity, we'll put a high number out here. All you need are those two hormones. So, and again, as long as you remember, with these things, ADH, water absorption, aldosterone, salt reabsorption, you should be able to, and then also you figure out they're going to work in opposition here. So if you have low osmolarity out here, do you want more water? Do you want salt?
Yes.
Okay, so again, even though water follows, it's not as much as salt follows. We want to correct that problem as fast as possible. So temporarily, at least they're going to work in opposition. If you have high salt out here, do you want water?
Yes.
Yeah,
You want it
yeah.
diluted. You want any more salt there?
No.
Okay. So if you understand just those relationships, you'll be able to get those multiple choice questions. Again, I would probably just practice. Make sure you get this on your test. I'll give you a piece of scratch paper. That might be this might be one of the charts that you write down when we're looking at those questions, so you don't, mess them up and go the wrong direction. Any questions about that? Okay, the two games.
So,
Let's get rid of this stupid hemoglobin saturation curve. So here's the key figure, okay? And we'll play the game, and we'll do specifically a little about, again, well, part of the game, and we're finishing up though, but the part that I haven't talked about that we'll put on that page is that the kidney is involved in besides the respiratory system, in pH control. And we're going to put those up here. But the other aspect that we'll be doing is, I told you, we're going to be looking like we did at the beginning of the class with respiratory and metabolic acidosis, alkalosis. But when you really, clinically monitor to try to determine this, you not only look at CO2 levels, you look at pH, hydrogen levels, but what I didn't talk at the beginning of class, it's in your chart on your PowerPoint, and when I'm going to practice again, is they also look at bicarbonate levels. And by knowing these 3 levels, you can determine those 4, which one it is. Okay, and I'm gonna show you how to do that, or how to practice doing that. There are going to be 2 problems on that. You can memorize the chart, but then you can mess up that chart. So I'm going to show a couple of tricks to that. Okay, because that's clinical significance. So we're going to do that. But first of all, let's just put the overall, again, the key figure to your test is these 3 figures. To all the game that we're playing of putting all these 4 systems together. And they involve 2 of them that are involved in the pH control. Type A, intercalated cells, and type B. Okay, over here what we're going to use, which won't be the pH control, but it's going to involve things, will be our principal cells, which are the ones that respond to aldosterone that we had just mentioned. Okay, the intercalated cells, again, sort of in that same area, the end of the distal tube, top of the collecting duct, and there's 2 types. One responds to acidosis, that's A. So it's going to respond, which helps, to acidosis. The other one to alkalosis. So the key is that equation I keep putting, they're in these cells. And we've had them in the blood cells as well for carbon dioxide transport. So let's put it again, CO2, H2O. Okay, we'll redraw this, CO2 plus H2O. We'll leave that alone right now. All right, so the other thing to orient yourself, at least when we're drawing it, if we're going this direction, we're basically talking about reabsorbing into the blood. If we're going this direction, we're secreting, excreting, and I'll use those words back and forth. This goes into the lumen, and then out. I'm going that way. So the first key before we add the other thing is just responding to acid-base. It's going to be these products. One gets reabsorbed, one gets secreted. If this is responding to acidosis, which means you have too much hydrogen, okay, which one is going to get reabsorbed? Which one's going to get excreted?
Hydrogen.
Therefore, bicarbonate gets reabsorbed to correct the acidosis, and you're peeing out the hydrogens. Makes sense. The opposite, alkalosis. We don't have enough hydrogen. Well, guess what? Kidney says no problem. We'll reabsorb hydrogen and get rid of the counterpart, bicarbonate. And so when we talk about just the kidney response to acidosis, alkalosis, those are the cells that are going to react. Okay? And to acidosis, the type A react, to alkalosis, type B react. But who's been lonely? Who wants to come into play now? Potassium. And now, after that, we can start to play the game because we're going to get all 4 involved. All you have to remember is potassium is involved in all 3 of these cells. That's why they're up on the board. Potassium levels are controlled by these 3 types of cells. And you just have to remember where it goes under normal conditions. So, where is potassium going?
Following
Following
bicarbonate.
The good news is that it follows bicarbonate plus minus, but that should help you knowing going the right direction. In this case, we get rid of it. For this principal cells, what did we talk about that we reabsorb? Sodium.
See.
But what are we getting rid of? Potassium. And again, this is not a byproduct. This is, we control potassium level. You know, there's other places in the kidney I'm not even talking about. We're controlling all kinds of things. That proximal tubule, where you do a little control. But here, these are not just used to respond to blood pressure, not just used to respond to acid base, but used to respond to potassium levels. Okay? That's how we can play the game, which is what we're going to play. Because the idea of the game, and we'll keep this up here, is that you can basically start, we'll have 4 plates in the air, and you could start with a blood pressure problem, or you could start with a potassium problem, or you could start with an acid-base issue, or respiratory. No matter where you start, you get to, the other 3 will follow. And you've got to do this step by step. That's why there's sort of 8 things here in a way. We start with high low blood pressure, hypohyperkalemia, or acidosis, respiratory acidosis, alkalosis. We'll start with any of those, and we're going to mainly use this to follow step by step how the body reacts, and then we have an overcompensation, what reacts to that. That's the game. One other thing, and then we'll play a couple. And again, this the best example is to look at aldosterone. This is saying when we make aldosterone, sodium is reabsorbed, with water. Sodium is reabsorbed. Again, we got reabsorbed, and potassium is excreted. If you, remember everything's at a level. We don't have faucets aren't off, and now we're going to make aldosterone, right? We have given levels of everything. And so anything that's going to cause, like we had up there, a decrease in aldosterone, you effectively are going to reverse it as far as what happens in the body. It's not like these these channels reverse, okay, and all of a sudden you have a potassium channel here. But the bottom line is we were getting rid of, let's say we were doing this, we were getting rid of a certain amount of potassium. If we lower aldosterone, we're not getting rid of that much, and therefore we are accumulating and reabsorbing it. And the same thing here. We were at a certain level reabsorbing sodium. If we decrease aldosterone, we're not, and effectively we're getting rid of it. Okay? So even though it's not this particular receptor, whenever we're decreasing this or causing this not to work, you just reverse them. Okay? If we decrease aldosterone, it's like we are accumulating what? Reabsorbing potassium. Okay? And getting rid of sodium. So you need to know that. Okay? So, again, let's do 2 or 3. I don't care which one. Start. Give me something. Hypoventilation? Okay. So it's good because we can actually use this up here. Remember, by the way, you're basically using each one of these once. Okay? Because you have to stop somewhere. So we're already using respiratory, and we hypoventilated. And again, you can use this equation up here. If you hypoventilate, you kind of look at it, that's going to cause an accumulation of what? Okay. Again, log. Okay, just following this again. High CO2. Log mass action takes us here. That causes hydrogen to go
Up,
okay, and that causes pH to go,
low,
and that basically is a condition called
metabolic.
respiratory.
Oh, yeah.
Respiratory caused it,
Acidosis.
right? And we did that very beginning. Okay, and and so we wrote the steps at the very beginning. We said up CO2. Here I just skipped it and put respiratory acidosis. Okay. Remember, you're always having this sheet here. If you have respiratory acidosis, is any cell in our body going to respond? Type A. remember the other little clue. Once you use one of these, you're done. You're not gonna use both of them when we're doing this. But you have to figure out which one. It's gonna be the most obvious one, and that basically is responding. So let's write what it does, or we'll write this. Type A responds. And we look at the two things it does. First of all, it's going to reabsorb bicarbonate, okay, and again, excrete
Yes.
acid to correct that problem, right? Correct the acidosis. That's what it was going to do. But at the same time, what else is it doing?
Reabsorbing potassium.
It's reabsorbing potassium. And that could cause hyperkalemia. So we reabsorb potassium, and we have the potential of causing too much potassium. And we're done with the intercalated cells, correct?
Yes.
Is there another cell that is going to respond to changes in potassium level?
Yes.
Principal cells, which means we're turning aldosterone up or down. We have hyperkalemia. So what do we want? Aldosterone up or down?
Down.
Up.
Okay.
Okay, you look at the figure on your picture. If you have too much potassium, you want to do what to it?
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it. The picture you're drawing is with aldosterone. Okay, I don't even want to put this down right now. I want to show you. So that means if we want to get rid of it, we're going to increase aldosterone. That's going to increase the secretion of potassium. Okay, so, but of course, we might have another effect. We'll see. We increase aldosterone so that we, again, secrete potassium to correct that problem. But at the same time, what are we doing? Reabsorbing sodium and water, maybe resulting in. What happens if you reabsorb too much water and salt? High blood pressure. Remember, we got to get all those involved. And now you stop. You don't go, high blood pressure, we're going to have A and P and da-da-da-da-da, right? You got to stop somewhere. Of course, in real life, maybe you won't be stopping. Maybe the patient isn't stopping, okay? This is the idea where you're going to have all kinds of symptomology. You have to figure out, okay, was this the initial cause, or was this a reaction to something else? And how about, why do we have high aldosterone levels? Was that the initial cause? Okay, so this is why we're sort of piecing these together. Remember, you're always going to involve one of these and one of these. You're always going to involve the respiratory system, and something. Well, you're also going to be talking about blood pressure. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do. You can do a branching one. Branching one, hyperkalemia. Okay. So you're starting with something else causing hyperkalemia. Are we all sort of, we're getting this, right? We're getting this? Because you missed this, right? Okay. Hyperkalemia. And the reason it's going to branch is what?
Because both cells are going to respond.
You have two cells in the kidney that respond to potassium levels. Okay? That's why we're branching this. Again, to say it, I say it again a lot, to reiterate, we're doing it this way, but it's going to be on the test like your last page, okay? In which I'm going to take you through, a defect in type A would cause what? You have all those 4 choices, okay? It's good, which cells are going to respond, and then what, I basically take you through that on these 4 or 5 questions, which means you probably are going to do something like this on the side of your page, but if you make one mistake early on, it's not that much fun. So you really want to practice this. Okay, so you're not going to have to draw me anything like that, but that's the way we're going to do it. Hyperkalemia. Okay, I don't care what you want. Do you want to start on this one or this one? I don't care.
Intercalated.
Okay, and so again, if we have hyperkalemia, what do we want to do with the potassium? So which one are we going to activate?
Type B.
Type B.
So put that over here for the kidney. Type B are going to respond. They're going to excrete, again, secrete potassium to correct that problem. But they are doing what? They're reabsorbing hydrogen, of course, and getting rid of, just put that on, bicarbonate. And what might that cause? And what kind of
Acidosis.
acidosis do we call that?
Metabolic.
That's metabolic acidosis, right? Something metabolically has caused it. By this response to correct one problem, we may have that problem. And so we have now created metabolic acidosis. And any other system or body might take care of that. Respiratory, okay? Your respiratory is going to respond. Remember, we haven't used him yet. Respiratory, or her, respiratory is going to respond, and we have acidosis. What are we going to do? Increase respiration.
Freak out, you said.
Blow out that acid.
Did you say freak out? Freak out?
And we're okay with that. I mean, we're done with that column. Okay? Type B responded. Okay, remember, we only used one of them. They corrected the problem of hyperkalemia. They caused another problem, metabolic acidosis. Our respiratory said, I'll take care of that, blew out that CO2, and hopefully corrected it. But this guy's saying, well, you know, you're fluent past me too. I care about potassium. And so at the same time, I've got to take care of it. If I have hyperkalemia, am I turning aldosterone up or down? Because we want to, again, excrete the potassium. But we are also
Reabsorbing
reabsorbing
sodium and water.
sodium and H2O, potentially
Increased blood pressure.
high blood pressure. And we've involved all four of them. We could start off with, let's do low blood pressure. You do one of each right now. Again, just to practice. You know, again, you should practice these because you need to practice and you don't want to miss these questions. If you get this, and I think, like I say, I already know everyone gets this. It's just like practicing. You're going to get these problems right. Okay, I had 40% of my Miracosta class because now they're ahead. Got an A on this test. Okay, with even less of a curve, 40%. That's actually a high number of A's, right? So you can. I know you got, and you know, and the other grades were pretty good too. There wasn't as, you know, it wasn't like a cardio thing. Cardio test is just devastating. I might have to regroup all that stuff. So. Low BP. Something's called low BP. Of course, we have that whole Renin guy going over there, but that's okay. We have low BP. We're concentrating on the actions here. And so what cell type's going to respond to low BP?
No, the principal cells.
The principal cells. Okay? And, but I should have known it too. You want to do high BP?
Okay,
All right.
sure.
Is that okay?
Whatever you think is best.
The, well, let's do high BP.
We could do low.
What?
Let's do high BP.
No battery.
Sorry, I'll just leave it. I was gonna reset.
Okay? High BP. Okay, something's got to respond to that. And